Narayana gunan prati samshaya sumaham jatas tad bhavam chetumarhati. Word to word translation. Iti, thus. Naha, our. Sumahabhaga, O glorious one. Narayana gunan, the qualities of Narayana. Prati, toward. Samshayaha, doubt. Sumahan, very great. Jataha, born. Tat, that. Bhavan, your lordship. Chetum arhati, please dispel. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. O greatly fortunate and learned Brahmana, whether Narayana is partial or impartial has become a subject of great doubt. Kindly dispel my doubt with positive evidence that Narayana is always neutral and equal to everyone. Purport. Since Lord Narayana is absolute, his transcendental qualities are described as one. Thus, his punishments and his offerings of favor are both of the same value. Essentially, his inimical actions are not displays of enmity towards his so-called enemies. But in the material field, one thinks that Krishna is favorable to devotees and unfavorable to non-devotees. When Krishna finally instructs in the Bhagavad Gita, Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vracha, Bhagavad Gita 18.66. This is meant not only for Arjuna, but for every living entity within this universe. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Itinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschat Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktaranda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. O greatly fortunate and learned Brahmana, whether Narayana is partial or impartial has become a subject of great doubt. Kindly dispel my doubt with positive evidence that Narayana is always neutral and equal to everyone. So, Parikshit Maharaj is requesting Shukadeva Goswami to give him some positive evidence that Narayana is always neutral and equal to everyone. The context of this discussion is that there was some pastime of the Lord that is being described where Narayana, Vishnu, sides with the Devatas and defeats the Asuras, right? And on the face of it, it looks like, Vishnu is being very partial. Recently, we were reading about the pastimes of Vamanadev. Even in that its story, it's not a story, in that history, there is very clear, outside, if you look at it, it looks like God is being very partial towards the devatas, right? Well, Krishna knew that Bali Maharaj was a great devotee. He knew that Bali Maharaj was ruling over all the planetary systems by dint of all the pious activities he was doing in respecting the Brahmanas and worshipping them and following the instructions of his spiritual master Shukracharya. Also, Vishnu knew that Indra had actually offended his spiritual master Brihaspati, and that's why he was bereft of his kingdom. Knowing all this, Vishnu, right, agrees to come in the form of Vamanadev to take away Bali Maharaj's kingdom. And it looks like it's not being fair. And as we, delve deeper, we'll see that, actually speaking, Krishna favored Bali Maharaj much more than he favored Indra, even though he gave him his kingdom. Right? So this concept of, is God fair, is a much debated concept across all religions. Right? If you think about the world today, can somebody tell me which is the most popular religion in this world and what percentage of people practice it, approximately? Islam? Not yet. It's Christianity. And what percentage of people practice Christianity? 10%. 60%. It's about 31%. 31% of the world practices Christianity. Islam is the second most popular religion. In about 15-20 years, 10-15 years, Christianity and Islam will become almost same, because Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world today for a long time. They tend to be favored by demographics. Followers of Islam tend to be younger, and they have a lot more children than followers of other religions. And so it's the fastest growing religion right now. It's about 24%. So what percentage do we think are Hindus? Huh? Below 5. No, we are a 1 billion population. Out of that, obviously, only 70-80% is Hindu. It's about 15% worldwide. 1-5. And Buddhists are the next most popular. What percentage do you think is Buddhist? About 7%. Yeah. About half of Hindus. Actually, that was a little bit of a shocking number for me, that there were so many Buddhists in this world. It's actually 7%. And it is 7% only because China, which used to be predominantly Buddhist for a long time, is no longer, it's, do you know what percentage of Chinese say they're atheist? They say that they're atheist. At least they say it. About, 69% of Chinese. Because the government, it's a communist government, and the government doesn't believe in God. And so naturally, irrespective of whether internally they believe or not, they profess themselves as atheists externally. So that accounts for the lesser percentage of Buddhism. Otherwise, Buddhism is big. The point I was trying to make is that when you look across all these major religions, right, there are some common themes of understanding across most of these religions, right? Prabhupada says in so many places, if you're a Christian, be a good Christian, right? If you're a Muslim, be a good Muslim, and then that's how you develop love of God. If you look at it, there has been a lot of studies done on this. There are about 5 common themes across all of these religions. There is always a theme of purity, right? Every religion talks about the need for purity, purity in consciousness, purity in our words, in our actions. And that is quite a deep concept across everybody, not just all the religions have it. There is also a concept of authority, right? There's a concept of an authority structure. For the Catholics, the Pope represents, for what we would call the spiritual master, right? The highest person, dearest person to God, I guess. So there's an authority structure in every religion. And there is also a sense of community, right? We say, how spiritual life is practiced in the association of devotees. There is also a very important stress on community in all the religions. Some religions take it to the extreme of saying, if you're part of the community, you'll go to heaven. If you don't believe in it, you're doomed, right? You're haram, or you're pagan, or you're this, or you're that. And they take it a little bit extreme, but there's always that sense of community. There is also a sense of not harming others, right? Almost all religions will implore people to not harm other living entities. Sometimes it only stops at human beings, because some religions, in their current practice at least, do not believe that animals and plants have soul. They believe that Christianity believes that only human beings have soul, right? According to their religion, animals, plants, they don't have soul. Right? So, don't do harm typically stops at, don't do harm to other human beings. And somehow, beyond human beings, they've extended it to few animals, right? Cats and dogs, sometimes horses. But not all animals get lucky like that. And then there is a concept of fairness, right? But that is a much debated concept, right? As even Parikshit Maharaj says, right? See what he's saying. Whether Narayana is partial or impartial has become a subject of great doubt. Right? Parikshit Maharaj is saying that. And it's actually a very predominant concept in modern thinking. In fact, if you go and ask a lot of people who say they're atheists, it's very predominantly driven by the fact that this world doesn't seem to be fair. If you think about it, in the United States, actually atheists are a minority. I think about 30%, 25 to 30% say they're atheists. In England, actually, it's almost a majority. There are about 49, 50% are atheists in UK, in England. But predominantly, they'll say that God is not fair. It doesn't look like God is being fair. If God is fair, why is a small child born with, so many problems? Like there's some small children born with, disorders of the heart, or or those that are mentally challenged or physically challenged. And why is a child born in Africa and Sudan and places like that where there's so much suffering for children, right? All these kind of questions are asked, and unfortunately, most of the religions don't have a good answer for it, right? In Christianity, as it's mostly practiced now, actually back in 300 AD, when the first Bible was written, I think we talked about it in previous classes, there was actually a group of scholars, everybody got together and they were deciding which concepts, because Christianity in the 300 years after Christ had developed different schools of thought. And they wanted commonality in thinking, so they got everybody together and they were debating, what is it that is common across Christianity that we should all keep? That is when reincarnation lost out and was taken out of Christian. There was a sect of Christians who practiced reincarnation, believed in reincarnation, but they were outnumbered in that discussion, and they were thrown out. In fact, they were driven out of the Christian kingdom and sent away because there was only one person, one sect abstained out of about 7-10 sects that got together. And they were driven out and they were sort of excommunicated from Christianity. So essentially, if you go back, reincarnation was always part of most of the religions. Anyway, as we know, Christianity doesn't believe in that. So their concept is, when somebody says, then why is somebody suffering? Their answer is, God has a plan. God is, He's trying to teach you a lesson through your suffering. In a sense, it is convincing that, yes, God is trying to teach me a lesson, but it's still at the back of the people's mind. It seems very, He could have taught me a different lesson. You could have given me a lot of, wealth and still taught me a lesson. I would have learned it more happily, right? I would have learned it more willingly and smilingly, kind of a thing. In a sense, actually, we also struggle, even though we understand that laws of karma, how, what we are subject to and what we are experiencing is a result of our own actions. Still, we also struggle to accept that, oh, really, why am I suffering so much? Why can't God, teach me a lesson differently? In fact, there's a very interesting story of a person who did a lot of research on reincarnation. He wrote an article that one devotee was referencing. So this person was very inquisitive to understand, why is there suffering in this world? Why is, what happens? Is there no fairness in this world and all that? And so, somehow, he got inspiration that he has to meditate to understand more about this. He had somehow come across this fact that meditation is the way that I can learn and understand more about this world, about this universe. Then he said, okay, what should I meditate upon? And this was in the 1960s and 70s, late 60s and 70s, right? Like, what was the most popular culture those days? Who was the most famous pop singer and all that? The Beatles, right? And the Beatles was a counterculture. I mean, they were known to be a counterculture, right? They were against all this, and they were New Age thinking and all that. And so this person was very inquisitive. He heard, Oh, My Sweet Lord by George Harrison, right? In My Sweet Lord, which was like top of the charts. Think about it, like, imagine, Hare Krishna mantra being top of the charts for like, for 20, I think it was like 40 or 50 weeks they were top of the charts. The whole world was singing Hare Krishna. That was the popularity of, Oh My Sweet Lord song. And so he heard that song. He said, oh, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, that seems to be the right thing to meditate on. And so he would sit and he would chant and meditate. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. He didn't read Prabhupada's books. He didn't come in touch with devotees. In one sense, George Harrison was a devotee. So he came in touch with George Harrison. And he took up meditation on Hare Krishna. And then he goes on to write how chanting Hare Krishna transformed his life, and he was exposed to so many things. He was exposed to so many mystic powers and this, and he was given the secrets of reincarnation and all that. He goes on to write. It's very interesting to see, somebody who did not even come in touch with Prabhupada's books, just heard Hare Krishna from, George Harrison, and who became, a devotee of sorts. And in that he talks about how, karma, we all know, we all experience suffering and happiness in this world in order to learn some lessons. And in that article he pontificates how most people, if you do not get in touch with some sense of deep spirituality, whole life you will learn one lesson. Sometimes, a lot of lives you learn only one lesson. Right? See, for example, if somebody is unfortunately a meat eater in this world, right? For them to learn a lesson of compassion will take a lot of lifetimes. Right? Do you know how many animals a typical meat eater, an average meat eater, will eat in one lifetime? Huh? 1 lakh. Oh, that's way too many animals. That's a lot. Any other more realistic numbers? Wow. That's 50,000 baby. That's a lot. If 1 lakh is a lot, 50,000 is a lot too. It's 8,000 actually. Something like 7,000 to 8,000 is what is estimated. But they actually don't take some smaller species into account. If you take all small species, you may come to a higher number. They don't take like fish and all that, because you can't, small crustaceans and all that, you can't even count them. They'll eat a lot of them, unfortunately, like mollusks and all those things. Anyway, let's not go there. But 7,000, 8,000 other living entities you're killing in one lifetime. And the Shastras talk about, you have to be born. Like if you kill a cow, they say, 60,000, like number of hair that is there in a cow. Like a lot of lifetimes you have to take to just get over the karma of, just meat eating. Right? So you're trying to learn one lesson for a long, long time. And most of us don't learn that lesson. Right? So karma is really meant for that. In the grand scheme of things, this is really not, this whole world and the suffering and happiness and distress and all that we enjoy in this world is such a fleeting thing. It really is not much. The Buddhists go to the extent of saying, Buddhists and Mayavadis, this is not even real. But our Shastras say that they are real, but they're fleeting in the grand scheme of things, in the number of millions of lifetimes that we have had. Right? So, Prabhupada says though, but for a devotee, if you're sincere, you can have an accelerated learning experience. Right? Prabhupada in many places, in one lecture, I think many of you have seen it on WhatsApp, it was passed around. Somebody asked him, how long will it take for me to be a pure devotee? Right? What does Prabhupada say? 1 minute, he says, not one life, yeah? 1 minute, 1 second, you can become a pure devotee. Right? But the problem is, we take the medicine and we take poison also on the other side. Both are going simultaneously inside. And typically what stops you from really becoming serious is usually not even the sinful activities that you do. It's usually the Vaishnava aparad that you do, the offenses that you do on other devotees. Right? So Prabhupada said many places that, you can become devotee very quickly if you are very sincere and pure. So, Even though we may be doing so many offenses, we may be chanting offensively, and we may be struggling with practicing the four regulative principles in the truest sense. But Krishna is very merciful. If we are willing instruments in His hands, He can teach us in an accelerated way. There was once a devotee teacher who was sharing her experience of teaching a small child. They did an assessment. You either do the yearly assessment. When this student came to the Gurukul, they did an assessment, and they found that for his age, he was 5 years behind for his age in terms of learning. But he was very inquisitive, and he had all this, signs of very submissive, inquisitive child. And this devotee teacher goes on to explain how they put an accelerated curriculum for that person. Okay? Right? So what happens, think about it, right? When they teach you something new, 1 plus 2 is equal to 3, addition. They teach you addition. What does your teacher do to reinforce addition? Another problem, right? And do they stop at 2 problems? How many problems they'll give you? Lots of them, right? They'll give you homework, they'll give you pages and pages of 2 plus 3 is this is that, is that. For many weeks, all you're doing is doing additions. Right? You make a mistake, you learn from it, it goes on for weeks. I remember what standard, you should ask children, what grade do they teach addition? What grade do they teach addition? First grade or something, first or second grade. And that whole grade, they'll teach you what? Addition, maybe subtraction. That's it. Right? Nothing else they teach you. So for many months, for many weeks, you're only learning 1 plus 1 is 1. Now, since this kid was so inquisitive, they came up with an accelerated program. They would teach 1 plus 1, give 10 problems, like I said, 10, 20 problems. If you got those 10, 20 problems right, then they'll say, okay, done, let's go to the next chapter. And if you didn't get it right, then they'll say, okay, fine, you didn't get it right, let's try more problems now. And they would spend more time. So they would experiment like this, and so accelerated in some weeks, and slow down in some subjects they were not good. So by using a very nuanced approach like that, and because he was so sincere, he was so this thing, in 2 years, he caught up on 7 years of learning. This is a real story. In 2 years, 7 years of learning he caught up. Very similarly, as devotees, Krishna gets personally involved in our lives. Right? He tries to use our karma, but same karma he will use to teach you 3-4 lessons at the same time. If you learn quickly, he'll say, fine, let's move on, next one. But there are some lessons we get stuck. Right? All of us get stuck at some lessons. Let us understand that. And that sometimes we get stuck at that lesson 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, 10 years, 20 years, a whole lifetime we're stuck in one lesson. Right? It all depends on how sincere we are and how ready we are to change. That is why when we see amongst devotees, we should not see, oh, he has got this fault, he has got that fault, he doesn't know how to do this, he doesn't know how to talk to people, he doesn't know how to deal with people, he doesn't know how to do that. That is not, what you should see. Well, that might be the case. In some cases, you may be stuck at that lesson for life. We should see how inquisitive they are to change. How eager are they to take lesson from somebody and to become different. How eager they are to, to get, to learn different lessons and move forward in their lives. Because that is what really matters. And that's what Krishna knows, and that's what Krishna tries to use our lives to teach those lessons. And then those lessons can become accelerators in our lives. Help us accelerate our um, our journey towards becoming nice devotees. But what exactly are we trying to learn? What is the main lesson that karma is trying to teach us? Can somebody say, what is that lesson that karma is trying to teach us finally? Nothing belongs to you and everything is temporary. Okay, that is definitely a lesson. But is that the most fundamental lesson? Is that why we are here? Because you didn't know that everything is temporary? I mean, if that's all you are to be taught. What you do, it will follow you. What you will do, it will follow you. For every action is opposite equal reaction. Fine. These are all important lessons, valid lessons. And when you say every action has opposite reaction, what kind of actions are we talking about? Why are we here in this material world? When you ask that fundamental question, what is the one answer that most devotees give? Like, why are we here in this material world? False ego, right? Enjoy independent of God. Then another thing. We are very close, they're all similar concepts. What is the, Prabhupada says this in many places, what is the biggest disease of a living entity? What is the biggest disease of a living entity? Envious. Right? Prabhupada says, Mayavada is the worst expression of disease. Why? Because you are the most envious. You are saying, why they should be God? I want to be God myself. Right? So enviousness is actually the fundamental disease of a living entity. So the fundamental lesson that karma is trying to teach us is how not to be envious. How can we coexist with everybody? And when can we coexist with everybody? What is that fundamental lesson you have to learn? When can you coexist? Love of God. And why love of God? Like, what is special about love of God? You can love everybody when you love God, because when Krishna is in the center of your lives and everybody loves Krishna with pure, unadulterated love, you'll automatically start thinking, hey, I'm not different from you, he's not different from me, we're all same. We're all living entities. We're all servants of God. So then because of this love for God, you'll start loving every living entity and interact with living entities in a loving manner. When there is that love, the deep love, things don't matter. And that's how we learn to cooperate and work together. Right? So that is the fundamental lesson that we're being taught by karma. Until we learn that lesson, we will be perpetually tested. Right? So, in this particular sloka, it is being talked about how Narayana is always neutral and equal to everyone. God is basically, this whole world is just a mechanism to teach us some important lessons, to get us to love of Godhead. And because we have love of Godhead, love of every living entity, and develop that most fundamental lesson. And that is the beauty of Krishna consciousness. It is able to explain the concept of fairness of God in all kinds of situations. Right? If you go back and think, I so clearly remember, for me the most fundamental attraction to Krishna consciousness was the beauty and simplicity of our understanding. And you're able to explain everything in the world. That is really like, if you take the basic concepts of Krishna consciousness and look at everything that's happening in the world, you can have a clear and concise explanation of it. And that is the beauty of this. And so if you see out of the 5 concepts that are common across all religions, fairness is something that is explained in beautifully in Sanatana Dharma as a whole, and especially in Krishna consciousness. And understanding this, we as devotees need to remember that life's tribulations and trials and tribulations are meant to teach you a lesson. The first question we should always ask, what is the lesson we're being taught from this thing? Because all of us will go through good times and all of us will go through bad times. And when we're going through these difficult moments, we should ask, what is that lesson we've been trying to taught? We're being taught. And if you are able to internalize on that and pray to the Lord, pray to the spiritual master, let me learn this lesson easily and quickly, then we can move on to the next lesson. And thus, as devotees, we have the opportunity to accelerate our learning. And in this lifetime itself, we can go back to Godhead. Prabhupada promises us that. Follow my instructions. And we can go back to Godhead in a minute, but unfortunately we have too many baggage. But at least let us try for the next best thing. This lifetime at least let us try to go back. And the important thing is not to get stuck in some one lesson our whole life. And how do you check for yourself that you're stuck in a lesson? You can ask yourself. If the same thing is coming up again and again and again, you have to set back and introspect. What is that lesson that we are stuck in? And how can we learn that lesson? And move forward. Okay? We'll stop here. Any one quick question or comment? No questions? Okay. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Bol Premanande Hari.